Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Andreas Borchert. I'm one of the founders and one of the two managing directors of PlanHorizon. Thank you very much for joining us here today for our second annual ServiceNow Strategic Portfolio Management Conference and spending some time here with us, learning from some of our customers, from James Ramsey from ServiceNow, and from some of my colleagues, and discussing things all around strategic portfolio management. So who is PlanHorizon? We are actually already about 16 years in the market. In all these 16 years, we always focused on the area of enterprise project portfolio management, resource management, agile methods, etc., etc. We have not done this 17 years with ServiceNow. So in the past, we also worked with some of the well-known tools in this market space, which we are now replacing with ServiceNow Strategic Portfolio Management. We work with ServiceNow as a pure play partner since almost 7 years. We are one of the very few partners worldwide, probably the only one. To my knowledge, it might be true, the only one who's actually focusing very much on the strategic portfolio management, on consulting and implementation all around this model. So today we hear from customers and share some best practices, etc. And I will lead you through this through our agenda in a second. One more thing, if you're interested in more content around strategic portfolio management, please go to our YouTube channel. We have content there from other webinars we did from the conference from last year. We have customer interviews with Aldi, for example. We have a lot of videos around processes related to SPM, both on the IT side about Scrum and SAFe, also on the business side with new product development, stage gate processes and other things. And in the next year, we will produce quite a few video casts around what we do, what we learn from our project, and also together with customers. Let's take a look at the agenda. So welcoming and housekeeping. Housekeeping basically limited to posting your questions in the FAQ, in the chat and the question and answers. Our first customer presentation, respectively, our first presentation will be by James Ramsey, who is a senior product manager outbound with the SPM business unit. And we worked a lot with James in the past, and he will give us latest insights in how he positions strategic portfolio management and also some glimpses into the roadmap. Then we will have our first customer presentation from Allianz Technology with Cruz Livingston. I spare myself the last name, sorry, Cruz. And my colleague and also founder of PlanHorizon, Dr. Daniel Tietze, who worked for the Allianz program management, the ServiceNow SPM program management for the last 2.5 years. After that, we will have a short break and then continue with a customer presentation by Günther Feigl, together with our project manager, David Jaunik. This is not directly strategic portfolio management module related, but should be very interesting to this community anyway, because it's about application portfolio management. And it's especially interesting, I think, because we did replace an enterprise architecture management, which is sometimes possible, and sometimes you have to take care that you have to see that we cannot replace every enterprise architecture management just straight away with APM, but Günther and David will discuss that. After that, we will have a presentation by my colleague Thorsten, and he will share some insights from his, I think, 9 years of practice now implementing EPPM systems, and almost 7 years doing this with strategic portfolio management. So he is the head of our SPM practice at PlanHorizon, and he has a very deep background in everything consulting and implementation around this module. He will also lead the panel discussion. On the panel, we have James Ramsey, Günther Feigl from Wacker. We have David Jaunik, our project manager, and then Thorsten leading the discussion. We hope that we get a lot of interesting questions from you. And in the end, we will do some closing remarks and possibly ask for some feedback or what we should do different in the next year. With that said, I would like to hand over to James, whom I already introduced, but James, maybe you can add a couple of words about you. And if you share your slides now, I believe I will get kicked out with my slides automatically.
Right, excellent. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is James Ramsey, and we're going to look at our strategic portfolio management presentation in terms of how we help you intensify delivering value to your customers internally and externally in your organizations. So I'm part of the product management team here at ServiceNow for strategic portfolio management. I also cover application portfolio management, and I've been with ServiceNow just about 7 years. My 7-year anniversary starts in January. So I've been with this product right from its inception all the way through to the great capabilities we have now. I've got a specific focus on looking at how we help roll out strategic portfolio management, supporting end-to-end change processes, and increasingly talk in terms of value streams. Now, in this presentation, we're going to look in terms of what our vision for strategic portfolio management is and how we discuss it with our customers. And also we're going to give you a glimpse of the roadmap, specifically what's coming in 2023. And because of that, we've got our safe harbor notice just to advise that we're going to have some forward-looking statements and some things might change in terms of some of the things that I present. Right, so in this particular section, we're going to talk about our position in strategic portfolio management, how we intensify the focus, and then look in terms from a roadmap perspective. Now, I'm always conscious when I'm doing a presentation and talking about the roadmap that I shouldn't forget about all the great capabilities that we already have. So I often start with this particular slide, and this is sort of one of two. I joined ServiceNow back in 2016 when we were on the Fuji release. And I've been with the product ever since. Now, what this slide shows is a great rollout of new capabilities that we've added to the strategic portfolio management solution over the subsequent releases in the platform. So if you think about back in 2019, we introduced an enhanced way of allocating resources through the resource allocation workbench. 2020, we introduced scenario planning from a portfolio perspective, all the way through to Tokyo when we introduced export to PowerPoint and some other great capabilities. So a really strong innovation around this area on the ServiceNow platform. And as you'll see on the roadmap, we're even going to be even stronger as we get into 2023. So if you look at strategic portfolio management and the type of discussions we get involved with, they all center around how we can deliver value faster to our customers. And by customers, I'm talking in terms of whether those are internal stakeholders to our organizations, our employees, or you're actually delivering products and services to your external customers or citizens, if you're looking at it from a public organization standpoint. Now, because we're sat in December 2022, I thought I'd start the session with a sort of a look back of what have been the hot topics throughout 2022. So I started out working with a very large organization back in January, looking at how they could establish what they term their control tower, their command center for their digital transformation. And they wanted across their organization one place where they have all visibility so they could track and manage all different types of change so they'd be better enabling decision-making processes. And that sort of theme went through the year as we looked at different organizations with this control tower conversation. But as we moved through the year, it became evident there was some key trends we were seeing. One was around organizations wanting to deliver at increased levels of scale and pace. And to do that, they were seeing the need and the priority to actually scale up how they were delivering agile within inside those organizations. And whether they were adopting a framework of the Scale Agile framework or they were doing it through like Scrum and Scrums, it became increasingly important for them to have overall visibility and coordination of their development teams, wherever they were inside the organization, and whatever tooling they were using. So we worked a lot with organizations on how we could enable those sorts of environments and essentially give them above team level visibility of what was going on and tying that back to the organizational purpose, the organizational strategy. Now, sort of aligned to that was also a shift in mentality in terms of organizations moving away from funding things from a project perspective and focusing on projects to actually a shift to working with a product mindset and how they could use that product mindset in order to better adapt to what the needs of their customers were and be able to better have pivot in terms of the different levels of priority. So we were looking there in terms of how we could then take project managers and product managers on a journey of how they could better look at structuring how they could fund their products and value streams. And value streams in itself has become increasingly a popular topic that we're engaging with, particularly how we look at end-to-end management of those. But how could it ensure that those products, those value streams were again aligned to strategy and how we were optimizing that process? Another aspect to that then came in terms of how we then looked at, as we were delivering products, how we're enabling that transformation, how could we better connect the traditional architecture communities, the enterprise architects, the business architects, with the execution teams. So how could we get involved in what I sort of term agile architecture, where we're doing enough design to kick off the delivery, but also connecting those architects right the way through the process, so we can actually manage those transitions from as is technology state to be technology state. So there were definite trends we saw in 22, and I'm going to see increasing amounts of that activity in those three areas. And that also then links back to the other stuff which is common. The fact of how could we help organizations better increase the alignment of their teams and the work back to strategic priorities, particularly in an environment now where those teams may not necessarily be in the same building or in the same country, and where quite often members of those teams may be working at home based on more flexible ways of working. So how could we better ensure that engagement and that alignment? And with that, increase those levels of agility, given the ability to continuously plan, reprioritize our portfolio based on changing priority to enable optimum use of resources. And as we've seen from an economic perspective, there's also then been a significant shift in focus into organizations looking at cost and reduction of costs. And a lot of that has stemmed from how they can eradicate complexity in the ways they operate inside those organizations, and then to identify cost optimizations in order to improve the ability to deliver value to their customers. So with that said, let's have a look in terms then of what we see from customers. If you think in terms of they need to increase alignment, they need greater agility, they're going to have a focus on cost. Typically, when we start a conversation with an organization, we'll sort of map out where the typical areas of activity are in that end-to-end process. So on this slide, I've sort of simplified a typical process from strategy, bringing in demand, prioritization, all the way through to delivery of that value to the customers. But if you then look at how organizations are then typically supporting those processes, it typically looks something like this, where those different islands are sort of disconnected by manual processes. A lot of people going around status chasing, collating information, pulling it all together in a PowerPoint and presenting that information or pulling it into Excel. But at each island, we typically see in siloed solutions, Excel plugging the gap, PowerPoint doing the reporting. So from a strategic portfolio management perspective, we're all about how can we simplify that landscape. There are going to be things on there that are tools that are strategic to those organizations where they've made significant investment, which they'll want to continue to utilize. So how can we wrap ServiceNow around them to get most out of those assets? And how can we rationalize some of the other silos and bring that capability onto the platform with inside strategic portfolio management? So to do that, I'm going to walk you through how we connect that end to end. Now, strategic portfolio management is unique in that it sits on the ServiceNow platform and derives the benefit of being on the same platform as the other capabilities within inside ServiceNow around service management, operations management, risk, HR, etc. That enables us to provide a true end-to-end change data record, which means at any point and at any level within inside the process, we're able to provide full end-to-end visibility of what's going on from strategy all the way through to value. Now, we support our customers are leveraging this capability across many different types of industry sector. So if you look at it from a value stream perspective, you'd obviously think ServiceNow would support those typical IT value streams around app development, providing service, but also strategic portfolio management is also being leveraged to support other value streams across the wider organization. Maybe looking at it from a product perspective, looking at an R&D value stream, how we can introduce new products or new treatments, maybe from a pharmaceutical perspective. How can we look at customer acquisition and the providing of products and services to customers? So what we're really looking at with strategic portfolio management is one solution that can support different value streams across the organization, inside and outside of IT. Now, to do that, strategic portfolio management starts with a strategic conversation. We're going to look in terms of understanding an organization in terms of its goals and targets or OKRs, and we're going to capture those in our goal framework, because that's going to give us the direction and also the measurements to measure success as we're enabling change and transformation. That'll feed into our funding processes, and the heads of transformation, the EPMO, will then pick up that information and then translate it into our strategic roadmap. And to do that, what we're going to use is a capability we call the Alignment Planner Workspace. And we're going to use a capability which allows us to plan with what we call a strategic lens. So I can plan my strategic investments on my roadmap and have that strategic roadmap and be able to share that across the organization. Those investments on that roadmap will then be the vehicles that drive the delivery of those goals and targets. Now, once you've established your strategic roadmap, that's going to stimulate demand. And what we're going to be doing there is creating a central pipeline of demand, capturing all demand from across the organization, whether that be change the business, run the business, or enhance the business. And that demand can come from multiple sources. It may come through what we call a single front door of demand, one place where anybody in the organization can come and make a request of any type. We can be leveraging ideas from employees and also externally from customers. And we do that ourselves at ServiceNow by having our idea portal on our ServiceNow community. All of that feeds into that central pipeline. We can connect to our enterprise architects and business architects using capabilities like application portfolio management, whereby if we're doing capability planning or rationalization of our application portfolio, or even technology risk management, the decisions that those architects take are all demand where we need to take action, and that feeds into the demand pipeline. We also introduced a new capability this year called digital portfolio management. Seamless experience where a service or an application owner can see the true end-to-end life cycle of their applications and services, make decisions through plan, build, run, and risk, and identify things that they need to do. Those things again feed into that demand pipeline. So that central pipeline of demand is a big thing in strategic portfolio management. It adds a lot of value to organizations. Then from that, taking that central demand, aligning that with the priorities coming from a strategic roadmap, we can then feed into our planning processes, whereby the different stakeholders at different areas of the organization can start to plan based on their lens, on their perspective. So if I'm a PMO with inside IT, for example, I might have my organizational lens looking at my IT organization, and I'm going to be using scenario planning to actually plan the optimum roadmap for delivery for my area based on the constraints of people, time, and money. If I'm a business portfolio management, I might be doing that around my marketing portfolio or my R&D portfolio. Or if I'm a product manager, I might pull up my product lens and start planning through the perspective of a product and a product line in order to come up with my product roadmap. Now, as I'm doing that planning, uniquely, that can contain any type of work, whether that be agile, scaled agile, traditional waterfall projects, or a hybrid mix of waterfall and agile. And effectively what we're creating then with strategic portfolio management is an all work enterprise backlog. One place where we can see all work, irrespective of the type of work, irrespective of the team who are delivering that work, and often irrespective of the tool that team may be using in order to deliver that work, because as part of this capability, we provide bi-directional integration to two of the most common solutions we see, Jira and Azure DevOps. That means at all times, those teams may be working in their tooling, but with inside strategic portfolio management, we'll retain full visibility of what's happening with that work, so we can provide that information, feed it back into our continuous planning processes so we can make better, more timely decisions. Now, when it then comes on to actually delivering the work, we can deliver all types of work across the organization, again, whether it's IT focus or outside of IT. Now, if we look at technology-driven change as one example, ServiceNow is in a unique position because of the fact that strategic portfolio management sits alongside service management and DevOps. We can connect our enterprise backlog with those DevOps teams, manage the deployment of what's being built through release and change management processes, so we can accelerate the delivery and ensure what we're taking through that process fits and is live as quickly as possible in that live environment. Now, also, once people start experiencing what we're delivering, whether it's new service and new product, new application, whatever that may be, there's obviously going to be things like incidents and problems that we need to manage. And from that, we need to take action. That action, again, will feed back into our enterprise work backlog and will be prioritized alongside everything else, maybe as a defect or an enhancement. And that will then be delivered back to the customer. So we really are connecting the true end-to-end strategy through plan, build, deliver, operate, and service. So we're maximizing the value to the customer. And ultimately, what we want to do at all points is capture and measure how we're performing, so we can feed that back into continuous improvement processes, and also from a value realization perspective, feed that in how we're attaining those targets that we've set, so we can actually pivot our plans if need be in order to ensure that we're adding and we're delivering the correct amount of value. So that end-to-end view is typically how we discuss strategic portfolio management with our customers, and we use it either to provide the initial vision, but then take that through and use it to support workshops as we take organizations through the journey of how they're going to deploy this capability within inside their organizations. Now, I'm now going to move from that into the product roadmap section. So here we're going to look at what's coming in 2023, but I thought as a bit of fun, we'll start by giving you a view of what we delivered in 2022, which is significant. So we're back in Q1. We launched with San Diego. We launched capability leveraging the new Next experience with inside ServiceNow. Key to that was obviously the alignment planner workspace, but also the introduction of the new project workspace, the next generation of the project manager's experience. And to that, we also introduced digital portfolio management. So through the year, from that great start, we introduced our OKR framework, export to PowerPoint. We also, in our November store release, we introduced the concept of lenses, which I'll come to into a moment. From an application portfolio management perspective, digital portfolio management was a key element. So was the technology reference model. And with inside Q4, we introduced a new cloud assessment to enable customers to better assess which of their applications in their portfolio we should be planning on migrating to the cloud and which we should be looking at retiring. So lots of activity with inside 2022. As I mentioned, lenses is a key new piece of functionality with inside the alignment planner workspace, giving that ability for focused planning and optimization of our roadmaps across the organization. So out of the box, we're shipping 3 lenses at organization, product, and strategic investment. And customers are then able to then define their own lenses. I've already had customers who have created their own value stream lens and a business capability lens. And what this essentially means is, as I'm planning my work, I can look at it through the lens that makes sense to me. So if I'm an architect, I might want to look at it through the lens of a capability and what's related to that capability. If I'm a product manager, I want to see that from a product perspective. If I'm from an executive layer, I want to look at it in the lenses of the strategic priorities, but it's a way of being more focused and a better way of aligning the work to what's important to you as you're doing planning. So you'll see more lenses coming standard out of the box through 2023. So what else is coming in 2023? Now, I won't spend too much time on this particular slide, but just to gives you a summary. I'll talk through some of these elements in a moment. A couple of things just on the right-hand side to talk about. There'll be intense focus on improving the user experience across the different personas that strategic portfolio management supports. Greater leverage of capabilities like AI and machine learning. So moving away from just a solution that's presenting you with information on a dashboard, for example, to something that's going to help and guide and recommend things to do based on the wealth of information that we're seeing in the solution. And we've already seen great examples of this through customers themselves leveraging ML capabilities for processes around resource allocation and looking at mapping actual costs to projects and things like that. So there's lots of great use cases that we're exploring in that area. So let's have a look at some of these great capabilities that's coming in 23. So inside the Alignment Planner workspace, we are, as well as providing the ability to plan our roadmaps of whatever area we are inside the organization, we're going to bring into that capacity planning. So as we're planning a roadmap, have the ability to quickly see what the impact of that roadmap will be on capacity, and that then based on the lens that we're looking through. So as I'm planning my roadmap, I'll be able to see exactly what does that mean for different types of resource, different types of role, and quickly interrogate what we may need to do in order to properly be able to deliver that roadmap based on that particular capacity. Now, because the Alignment Planner workspace allows us to work with all types of work, traditional work and agile, this will be capacity planning will support all of those different work methods. So a unique visibility, we'll be able to see that all in one place. So as I see my roadmap at the bottom of the screen, I can see the impact of it at the top. And I can easily then interrogate what does it mean to say, in this particular example, my project managers are over by 130%. What does that look like? What's impacting that information? So I'm going to have all of that information visible to me as I'm planning my roadmap, so we can ensure as we go and deliver that roadmap, we're confident we've got the resources to deliver it. Over time, then we'll look at how we can then introduce that AI aspect to capacity planning by being able to provide recommendations around, how can we do rescheduling based on capacity constraints or based on priority or the dependencies of different elements within inside that roadmap. In addition to having that capacity perspective, we're then going to bring in the financial element. So not only will we be able to see what the impact of our roadmap based on capacity, but we'd also understand what does it mean from a funding perspective. Have the ability then to do lean funding inside the Alignment Planner workspace to ensure we're funding the right elements of the roadmap at the right time. And that will also enable us then to have a better alignment of that funding to the goals or OKRs that we've defined inside the organization. The next element of that is then scenario planning. So we already have what if scenario planning for our project portfolios inside the portfolio workbench, but we're taking this up several notches. Because as I mentioned, the Alignment Planner workspace allows us to work with any type of work. We're going to be able to scenario plan across any type of work. The ability to then create multiple scenarios and understand then the impacts of those scenarios based on goals, funding and capacity, all inside the Alignment Planner workspace. So giving greater ability of organizations to pivot their plans and optimize them within inside the workspace, aligned to the lens that they're looking at in terms of how they're planning. So really exciting, that next step of being able to overall plan using scenario planning. Now, those elements there were all part of the Alignment Planner workspace. As I mentioned earlier on, with Inside 2022, we introduced a new project workspace. And as you'll see moving forward, we're going to incrementally add additional capability into the workspace. In November, we added the new RIDAC capability, the risk, issues, actions, decisions, and change requests, and all now available within inside the project workspace. And we're not just doing a lift and shift from the classic workspace into the new workspace, we're actually enhancing the capability. So now I can manage all of my project controls within inside a single grid. The next step is the detailed resource planning and making that easier to use with inside the project. So that will be arriving with inside the project workspace. And then we're going to then add, again, additional capability. So as I mentioned, using AI and machine learning to better assist not only the creation of what resource plans do we need for this type of project, but also how can we find resources faster to support that. Greater focus on notifications to identify where we've got collisions in resources, and also further forward, recommendations of what we need to do to address those different collisions or the different outcomes. But the idea is to make this simpler and more intuitive to use with greater visualization, all possible because it's all based with inside the next experience.
James, 5 minutes left. Very sorry.
That's okay, Torsten. I think I'm good actually. So the final element, just to mention, is a new type of capability altogether that we're going to be bringing in. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're seeing that significant shift towards organizations wanting to move to a product model. And what we want to do is help product managers in their day-to-day job. So if we look in terms of a product manager, they get continually getting lots of feedback, and it's not just new ideas for new features. It's all sorts of feedback, which may come from an idea portal, but may come through from a survey, may come through from a conversation or documentation that have been sent. So what we're looking to do here with capturing the voice of the customer with inside the solution is have the ability to capture those customer insights, be able to relate them to our products, provide a single area where we can analyze all of those data insights, and from that convert them then into the backlog that will then be managed and prioritized with inside the Alignment Planner. So a key element of bringing all that information together and have that one place that the product manager can go to look at those trends, look at those the suggestions and ideas, and then take them forward into a prioritization process to then be delivered. So that voice of the customer will be something that towards the end of 2023 will be something we'll be looking at delivering. So closing remarks. One key thing for me around strategic portfolio management as I talk to customers, the key element for simplicity to remove complexity and cost, one solution, one data model for all types of work across the organization. Through the use of the Alignment Planner workspace, the new introduction of lenses and portfolio plans is the ability to better support continuous planning, making an organization more agile, better able to adapt to changing priorities, and the linkage into our OKR goal framework to ensure what we're working on is aligned to those goals. And one thing finally, which is very key to me, when we talk about all work with inside strategic portfolio management, we do mean all work, because out of the box, strategic portfolio management can connect to all of the other capabilities on the platform, whether that be IT service management, customer service management, etc. So we can actually manage and prioritize all of that work, give visibility of all of that work in one place. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for you attending today. Thank you, Andreas and Torsten, for the invite for me to present. And I'm very happy to answer any questions now or as follow-up to the session.
James, thank you very much. Like always, great presentation, and yeah, truly fantastic roadmap. We listen to your presentations quite often, but you have every time you have a lot of new things I haven't heard of. So really great. I found it really interesting when you said, yeah, you joined about 7 years ago. So I think just shortly before we, as PlanHorizon, became a partner. And there was something, ITBM something, but if you turn around and look at how far ServiceNow has come with this strategic portfolio management from the strategic level down to very new elements like voice of customers, etc. That's really amazing. So to all the participants, please post your questions in the chat or in the Q&A section. I don't see any at the moment. There's one in the Q&A session from an anonymous participant, and I will read the question, James. What information does AI, artificial intelligence, or machine language use for finding the optimal resources, calendar, skills, previous assignments, etc.? So how does this AI part work?
Right, so what you're able to do, we've got a number of different sort of AI solutions that are native to the platform. So the one we've been using primarily at the moment is similarity searching, and the ability with that to create solutions to check on patterns of information. So you're able to set up your solution based on the information you want to compare. So quickly and easily you can sort of look at what the pattern we're looking for, and then look at what's there existing, and to do that you're sort of looking in terms of the solution being aligned to various tables inside on the platform. When you create those solutions, you can run them through training modes, which go and look at the various data. And obviously, it's a learning process. So as there's more data in the solution gets more accurate and those sorts of things. But there's lots of great opportunities there. I think we're only just scratching the surface of what's possible. And that's why we've got a specific focus in 23 to do some more work in that direction. And it's something, you know, taking the lead from some customers who have already looked at this and looked to leverage that capability as it sits on the platform already.
Very interesting. So is this a future vision that you have actually? You have an eye making recommendations or even resource assignments. Look, it's better this way, and if you shift this resource here, you will have a higher portfolio throughput or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things if you think about it is, rather than, you know, present somebody with a dashboard and then that person then needs to go in and interpret it, and now how I interpret it may be different to say how you interpret it, Andres. What we want to do is have the system giving the user intelligence around things that they may not have known about unless the system had actually found it out for them. So it's a different model in terms of, you know, traditional software, right? There's the facts and figures. You then go and find out what you want to do. This is going that next step to say, well, actually, we've got all this data, and from that we can actually say, well, you need to do this based on what you've done in the past and those sorts of things.
I see. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I have another question. Any kind of work across the enterprise, IT and business. You mentioned that in your presentation, and we see that as a partner, we have discussions and also already built solutions, like, for example, for Miltini Biotech, where we implemented in IT and business for the development of medical diagnostic devices, and that works fine. So if you look on it from the other side, do you see that SPM fits for any kind of business project portfolio management, or would you say that there are certain industries where you would not see SPM? One thing which comes to my mind is, for example, the construction industry. Would you say, no, we go everywhere and it doesn't make sense?
I think it's a really good question, and I think I've spent a long time. We spend a long time talking about this.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good. We a little bit over time, so maybe a short answer is possible.
Yeah, so I think SPM can be applied to all the areas of the organization, but there may be certain use cases. If I'm building a power station or something like that, whereby you may be asked, there may be specific types of capability that's specific to that industry sector that you may need. Yeah, so I would say definitely where there's an overall plan that needs to be aligned to strategy, and where we need to then break that down into what work needs to be done in order to do that, SPM fits that bill across the organization. It may be some of those work packages, they may need to be done in something specific to, maybe a scientific process or an engineering process.
Okay, we have one more question here. We do it quickly. Does capacity management also take into account the management of investment capacity and not only the resource part?
So within what's planned for the first half of the year, it's going to be from a resource capacity perspective. If we're talking from an investment perspective, from a funding perspective, that will be covered through the funding area. But the capacity plan is looking at the overall resource aspect, both operational and non-operational resource.
Okay. We're a little bit over time. Thanks again, James, for joining us here. Great presentation, and looking forward to work with you in the next years. So our next presentation coming up now is a joint presentation from my colleague, Dr. Daniel Tietze, and Cruz Livingston. Cruz is the ServiceNow SPM team leader at Allianz. We work with Allianz for, I think, about a little bit more than 3 years, and the title of the presentation is Allianz Technology Scaling Up Strategic Portfolio Management. Over to you, Cruz and Daniel.
First of all, thank you so much, Andreas and Daniel, for organizing this and for this opportunity. This is me, Cruz Livingston from Allianz Technology. I implement and manage strategic portfolio management for Allianz Technology and group of companies. I work as in charge of product of PPM building, which we are building for past almost 5 to 6 years. So this is me. Nice to meet all the participants.
Yes, and I'm Daniel Tietze. Thank you very much. I've been working with Allianz Technology for the past 2.5 years, working very closely with Cruz's team, supporting them in their ServiceNow SPM journey, and looking that we can leverage the roadmap and provide more benefit from ServiceNow SPM to Allianz Technology. And in this presentation, we'll take you through some of the journey of Allianz Technology, some of the findings from Allianz Technology. So after the very good presentation from James around the tool and the tool capabilities, we'll now take you on more of the Allianz Technology journey of running a multi-year ServiceNow SPM implementation. Next slide, please, Thorsten. Next one, please.
So just a kind of introduction about what is Allianz Technology and how SPM is involved in this. First of all, Allianz Technology is a strategic technical partner for Allianz group of companies. So we position ourselves across the globe, and we kind of almost a decade of journey along with Allianz Group, where we worked as an Allianz Technology partner, manages all the IT and applications and softwares for them. And like we said, that we having 2 parts. One being part of an internal organization, know this experience, and also being locally available for individual customers and and the needs. So it helps us a lot to position ourselves as an IT partner for managing all their applications and supporting with IT infrastructure. So maybe next slide.
Great. So we've seen the end-to-end roadmap and the end-to-end capabilities of ServiceNow SPM in James's slides and presentation earlier. And Allianz Technology with their SPM implementation actually have quite a large footprint across the entire end-to-end chain. So we're leveraging a lot of the end-to-end flow that we already saw in James's slide, from the idea through demand request, all the way through projects. And Cruz, what would you say are the highlights of this architecture, of this installation for Allianz Technology use and for the overall company?
I would like to continue from what James and Andrea said. So we also started our journey almost 6 years before. That is also the initialization of SPM in ServiceNow as an offering. So for us, Allianz Technology also, it's kind of a very good learning path and also kind of a together growth along with this SPM product feature development along the ways. So we started with normal project, shifting from the old tools or multiple tools and having a pilot of 3 to 4 branches in 2017 or beginning of 2018. And we started with project management and used certain part of resource management in 2018 and 2019. Then with the more offered features from the product itself and ServiceNow itself, we could enable ourselves into 2019 and 2020 a lot into more deeper into project management, introduction of demand management. Then we also have a very strong presence even before SPM was existing in Allianz Technology. We have very strong presence of SAP for the financial and compliance reasons. And we also have systems for identity access management for the security reasons. So we try to integrate them as well with SPM. So it's overall a very good journey. And in last 2 years, we also expanded ourselves from just not the project and resource management. We expanded ourselves into demand management. We connected all the time cards directly into SAP for invoicing, automated billing and charging. This year, was there somebody on unmute? Okay, just to continue. So last in 12-15 months, we also implemented IDEA portal now into the system, and we also expanding ourselves into program management and looking forward for the next year where we will be looking at portfolio strategy side of it. So altogether, like Daniel mentioned, it's an overall full-fledged footprint into SPM, and it's an overall journey along with the product.
Yes, and I think what's very interesting about the installation is that through the tight integration with SAP, one thing is the ServiceNow time recording, ServiceNow project management becomes an integral part of the billing and charging lifecycle at Allianz Technology for all projects delivered towards the entire Allianz organization. And also, we saw in James's slides already, we saw that SPM is better together. So ServiceNow Allianz Technology has a very large footprint in ServiceNow usage, also in ITSM area, help desk area, and so on. And we actually have a wealth of foundation data that we're leveraging in the SPM space in order to provide the SPM functionality. Next slide, please, Dawson. So we wanted to talk a bit about the scaling and the scaling of the scope and the scaling of the solution within Allianz Technology. And this slide addresses some of the user community growth over the past years. So as Cruz has said, SPM is in use at Allianz Technology since 2017. The user community has grown over time. And also over the past year and a half, we have onboarded more and more users onto the ServiceNow SPM platform, and additional onboarding is planned for the next years as additional groups and organizations come onto the platform. Cruz, what would you say are the highlights of the user community scaling and the user size scaling, and where are these users coming from?
So from this side of it, along with the extended features and options and functionalities that we bring as part of SPM, we also gained user adoption into this area along the growth of SPM into Allianz space. And like it showed in the PPT slide, like in last five and a half years, we almost onboarded 8,000 active SPM users currently in the system, and we are pursuing further. So meaning that we have two types of end users. One, Allianz Technology employees and branches of companies across the globe. Second, the customers that we serve, which is Allianz group of companies where Allianz Technology works. So since SPM is handling both customers as well as internal and external stakeholders, so we are trying to build and onboard both kind of parties into the system, where we will achieve a one place where they can work together for their strategy, both for project management, resource handling, reporting, and everything. So, and also in last 1.5 years before, internally in Allianz Group, we initiated as the initiative called Gear Shift, meaning that moving most of our IT relevant topics towards Allianz Technology, even from other partners, just to be consolidating from other tools to this. So here SPM also got a momentum that in last years and going to be continued in the upcoming years, is that we will be consolidating many SPM relevant tools and users towards ServiceNow platform. So that's about the user journey.
Yes, and I think with the user growth that we have and the user growth that we're facing, it would make sense to keep the functionality and the functional richness of the platform stable. But in fact, over the past year to 2 years, we found that we're growing both the user community, the user adoption within Allianz Technology, but we're also growing the actual functionality that we're providing through ServiceNow SPM to Allianz Technology, to groups within Allianz Technology. So we've got a couple of the milestones and highlights just for the past year on the slide. Cruz already mentioned a couple of them. We've got a backlog on the roadmap for the next year as well. So growing the user community in parallel with the functionality. Cruz, what would you say were the biggest challenges there? How did this work? How did we address this?
Yeah, there are pros and cons. The thing is that, like I said, the growth and the feature offering from the product really helped us to reach a lot of people and make a clear value add via SPM implementation in their things. But also on the other side, when we reach out to international onboarding, so we need to maintain the central governance, keeping the local needs in mind. So this is kind of one kind of challenge that we had. Second, the one side we are developing the product, improving, enhancing. On the other side, we are trying to roll out to add more user into this tool. So balancing both with the regular trainings and combining the process knowledge to the end users, bringing them also with the tool training, kind of a continuous effort. So this kind of a challenge that we faced, but also this is kind of solution that we also brought in, which currently started working, having this process tool and make it as a continuous circle where we can enrich the end users with new features, with the smooth change management, and provide them value adds.
That's great. Thanks, Torsten. Next slide, please. So one of the things that obviously you face when you're growing the footprint of SPM, growing the organization, also growing the user community, is the question of how do you establish your SPM team, your delivery team actually, how do you structure it? And there we also had a journey over the past 2 years. You see at the top, you see that we've grown the SPM team within Allianz Technology, and we've also included or implemented several structural elements. So we have a much better structured SPM team for the overall delivery than we had a couple of years ago. One of the challenges that we found, and we'll visit this later in a later slide as well, is SPM caters to multiple user communities, and it also caters to multiple process areas and requirement areas within the organization, where we get different types of requirements which all need to be managed in the SPM delivery chain. And Cruz, what you see some other highlights of the new structures that we've implemented for the delivery team, and as we're in the user community setting here, what would be possible learnings also for other organizations looking to roll out or to increase their SPM footprint?
Yes, so scaling up the team was one of the toughest, but it was really working out for us as of now. So to the people who are looking to scale up, for example, in the last 1.5 years or 2 years, we scaled up our team almost 3x. So like Daniel mentioned, our thing was a bit value driven or business value driven. So we prepared squads which deliver these values to those business process and business requirements, which kind of an individual squad of analysis, architecture, and development team which caters to deliver them. And we have kind of a horizontal team which takes care of separate squads for testing, which means that they take care of end-to-end testing, regression testing, regardless of which happens in which squad. And then this gives us a lot of control over regression testing for frequent and regular implementation and go live possibilities. And also we had all this platform architects in parallel, so to keep platform needs and sanity in place. Plus we also had this onboarding and change management team as a separate squad, which always helps with every changes, every significant communication and all those things together. So this helped us a lot in the given complexity in our organization. And we also had kind of a core team on the program level, which manages and overlooks all these squads together. So to come to this structure, they took some time and trial and errors, but this structure to the complexity needs and the individual or separate business needs, what we are trying to achieve, this is working for us. So yeah.
That's great. And I think specifically what I think is a highlight also specifically is the testing team and the maturity that we get with releases being tested, new updates being tested, new features rolling out. And we also see the testing team as quite an important part of the process. In the next slide, please, Torsten. So one of the challenges also with growing user community, you get more user requests, you get more user findings, questions from the growing user community towards the tool and delivery team. And the first level there obviously is the help desks and support. So with ServiceNow, ticketing with help desk functionality, Allianz Technology already has established a very mature and very well-performing help desk and support infrastructure and organization. But we found over the past 2 years that a lot of the requirements or requests which come in from end users, which are passed on by help desk or by support, were overloading the delivery team in terms of questions that needed to be retested, specifically overloading the business analysis part. User has a problem comes in, help desk cannot really answer, passes it on directly to the delivery team, to the BAs who originally worked on the functionality and rolled it out. And here we've introduced one major change, and also for maintaining and supporting the different business teams and supporting actually a continuous delivery across new features or new requirements from the business team, along with what the end users are asking for. We've got a couple of highlights here in this process. Cruz, how would you see the changes that we made here?
Yeah, I would like to just close this with one statement of thing what James mentioned about how SPM closely works with other areas of like ITSM and things, which helps and makes it better for the business value add. And this really is the case with Allianz Technology. As you see that we integrated a feedback loop of end users along with business, and we have doors that they can knock via incidents, via enhancements, via feedback loops, spotting sessions, and we navigate them via funnel, which either judged by a service desk and help desk or judged by business teams. Then it becomes a new demand and the flow which takes in, and then it's kind of a circle which continues. There are different people, different teams which supports this, but it's kind of an interconnected kind of automated process, also using the capability of ServiceNow together with the tool support. This is kind of an overlook. That's what I see.
That's great. Can we go to the next slide, please, Torsten? So as we discussed and as we talked about, we have an international rollout, and Allianz Technology is supporting international units and additional units coming in onto the platform. We've got a couple of bullet points about the challenges that we faced in this cruise. How would you see this, and what would you say are the bigger challenges or opportunities even that we faced over the past months with these international rollouts?
Yeah, so the challenges, I think I already mentioned once before in the slides, that during the international, it's always difficult to make people move from one tool to the other when there is also process change and standardization, and then there are some international requirements or local requirements. What opportunities that we found is that there was a lot of places where we can by default provide value starting from day one. Second, what we also analyze as opportunities that from the company management point of view, to bring via tool a central process governance. So these kind of uncommon reporting and all those things very transparent. So and we also closed many other small local tools and license parts, cost effectiveness, optimization, single place governance and tracking. So there are many opportunities that we also identified, and challenges also comes with this. How we are currently managing with some cornerstones, like keeping the central governance very strong in that particular framework, allowing the local needs as kind of a bit more flexible and accommodative way, and keep on having a very strong and how do I say, along the run change management and communication support for them.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, thanks. Okay, so now
we should come to an end, because we also have a couple of questions from the audience.
We do have questions. So, okay, maybe some of the key learnings and takeaways to get towards the end. Torsten, next slide, please. No, next slide. Thanks. So, some of the key learnings, obviously, as we talked about, periodically onboarding additional user groups and additional functionality. And one of the strengths that we've developed here is to align the growth of the user community and the development strategy, and together with this, establishing a good SPM delivery organization, good delivery processes, to include good support for the user community, good support for the end users, and also handling requests very well from the end users, integrating them into the delivery plan and delivery pipeline. One of the additional points also that James again highlighted in his initial presentation is basing SPM on existing platform data and leveraging the interleave with ITSM functionality with a well-established service model, service portfolio, and also having things and having the models based on a common understanding in terms of the CSDM. We'll be highlighting that later on in a couple of the later presentations as well, specifically also around the APM part. But talking a common language, having a common set of platform data that SPM talks to, so it doesn't exist in a vacuum, so it leverages the support for the overall work. And also, what is necessary, what we find is reevaluate your customizations regularly, keeping track with the SPM maturity, the functional richness of the tool that is constantly evolving. We saw James' very impressive presentation. So if we do have customizations that might have been necessary in the past, revise those, check those, and maybe replace them or work back to out of the box, which Allianz Technology has actually done very successfully over the past 2 years. So there was a large back to out of the box effort for the entire SPM stack, where a lot of customizations were reverted, and we're now leveraging more of the out of the box functionality. Cruz, from your end, any additional learnings? I think I took them all.
No, I mean, there is nothing much to add. It has been an interesting journey with a lot of learnings, and growing along the side of the product growth was a really different experience altogether, and looking forward.
Cool. Right.
Okay,
As
yeah.
Andreas said, there are a couple of questions.
Yeah, I
I'll
have
just
a
take
couple
them
of
on there.
questions, and I will pick a couple of them. We have
Okay.
two, but first I want to say, Cruz, Daniel, thank you very much. Extremely interesting.
Sorry for the shaky start.
Must be one of the largest SPM programs in Europe for sure. About the US, I don't know so much. Quick look at the questions. Here's an interesting one. Do the countries covered by Allianz Tech include Germany? And if yes, how do you manage the timesheeting and the agreements with the workers' councils?
So, yes, we are including in Germany, and this is our central governance team decided from the German country. So we launched in 2018 itself, the time tracking for Germany. How we are managing with the workers' council, normally what we do is that we explain them, there are certain checkpoints when it comes to usage of the tool and time tracking, who is approving, and for whom the data should be visible, like only to the line manager, not cross-checking, how we are actively avoiding comparing one resource to the other resource. There are certain checkpoints. This we do from the process perspective, how we are handling it on process roles perspective. Then we also show them from the tool perspective, how this has been implemented before even going live. So meaning that we create a process workflow, then we create kind of a prototype for them, get into the workers' council meeting, explain them, get an approval, implement, and then move forward. If there are any enhancements or changes because of company needs or something, this goes as an amendment or additional circulation in the upcoming workers' council.
Yeah, maybe, thank you, Cruz. Maybe a comment from my side. So we have worked with Workers' Council, Betriebsrat, Personalrat in Germany. Yeah, all these years, more than 10 years for sure. And yes, you have to sell it to them. There is Leistungs- und Verwaltungskontrolle where you need an agreement, but you have to actively involve them there early on. You have to sell the idea to them. And in 90% of the cases, that works quite well. Sometimes you have company politics and you might have a problem, but involve them early on. That's what we learned. A couple of more questions here. We cannot answer all here. We will pick them up in the chat and try to answer them later. So is agilization impacting the SPM platform? I think I know the answer already. And how do you see these changes coming up?
Yes, it is impacting, and we as a company also we are going towards more agile driven company. So, and SPM's current features and growth and offering that comes along really helps us a lot to move into that way. Of course, it impacts our current legacy setup that we have been doing for almost 4 years. But as Daniel mentioned in one of his statements, it's a continuous evolvement and enhancements for us. And we were successful so far in evolving and using SPM relevant features, successfully changing our process also in between. So first of all, to answer the question, yes. Second, of course, this will have an impact, and like we did it in the past, we'll also go through this.
Okay, so we take a quick one more, and then the others will answer after in writing, after the conference in writing. How do you cope with a significant volume of training?
One thing is the central training, and we always collaborate with business. So every training will have kind of business and tool together so that they get all the functional knowledge plus how to do it in the tool. Then we also have local agents like train the trainer or change agents whom we normally train. So at least we have this kind of Q&A sessions, training period offered quarterly basis so that the user get to know. So these kind of changes, what is coming along. Yeah.
Plus, over the past 1.5 years, the business groups have been very, very active and have spent a lot of effort actually building up an e-learning solution. So there is an Allianz-wide e-learning solution, which now has a lot of SPM content in it, process-based. How do I do this? How do I do that? Very situational, very much aligned with the process, with the tool. And we're actually, when we're doing online live trainings, the completion of the e-learning is one of the prerequisites. And that actually works very well, because then you're going into the training situation and the people have already seen the processes and the graphics in the e-learning tool and had a chance to work through that at their own speed.
Great. One more comment. Without a proper approach to organizational change management and proper training, any kind of SPM solution will not work. I think we will continue trying to finish on time at 5 p.m. Central European Time. Next presentation is not about strategic portfolio management, but about application portfolio management, a related area. So I know Günter Feigl, and we actually work for Wacker Chemie for the last 5 years, if I remember correctly. And so it has been a longer journey. In the first couple of years, we did an initial implementation of strategic portfolio management, which we then refined in a number of projects. And if I remember, also, we actually had already 5 years ago a discussion about application portfolio management, but then obviously the discussions took a little bit longer time. But this year it was done successfully, so the implementation is completed, and we actually replaced an enterprise architecture management system, Lean IX. So very interested to hear from Günter Feigl from Wacker Chemie and from David Jaunik, our colleague who joined us about half a year ago, about what are the business reasons behind that, how did it go, what did you learn in the project, what was the focus, etc. But maybe, Günter, you can start out saying a couple of words about you, and David, same for you.
Yeah, thank you, Andreas. I hope you can hear me well enough and also see me. If you give me...
Yes,
Okay, perfect. Yeah, as mentioned, my name is Günter Feigl. I'm the head of IT service management within Wacker Chemie. Within that department, it's not really basic IT service management, but a little bit more like strategic portfolio management as well, together with some very central areas that we have, especially with including a team that is called platform configuration, which means everything that happens in the platform ServiceNow is provided by my department. So one thing a little bit to correct, we are not finished yet, Andreas, and you know that the final rollout has not taken place, but we are far enough to have a conversation like this and demonstrate what we had in mind at the very beginning and where we come through during the project. Okay, if you go to the next slide. Yeah, 2 slides concerning Wacker as a company. Many of us don't know the company, but everybody, I believe, has some parts from us. We are not producing for end users, but we are strong in automotive and transport of the way construction, and you can read this. We have 4 business divisions dealing with things like renewable energies in terms of hyper pure silicon and things like that. I think every second chip in the world uses Wacker material. One of the competitors is China in this respect, but we are producing a lot of silicon for the industry. Okay, yeah, as you can see, and this is important in order to see where we come from, and we are a global company. We are definitely not as big as Allianz or other players in this market, but we are also spread over the world, as you can see here. The headquarters is in Munich in Germany, but we have sites in the US as well as in Asia, China. As you can see here on the orange dots, we have 26 production sites, and this is what we provide services for within a centralized IT in Burghausen and Munich. Well, as Andrea mentioned at the very beginning, we had kind of this situation. I don't want to go too much into into the details, but you see that ServiceNow was our main and still is our main IT service management platform, and for applications, business processes, capabilities, and stuff like that, we have another platform in place, LeanIX. And to be really honest, LeanIX is not a very bad product, but the advantages that we would have in the end will come later during this presentation. The main area are the applications that currently sit in LeanIX as a separate platform, and we considered developing a lot of interfaces to have the data out of LeanIX in ServiceNow, because applications are part of the CSDM, which we will see on the next slide then. But in order to provide all the services in IT service management, the first ideas at the beginning of the complete story was that we thought about the common service data model, providing all the information from IT service management basic issues like the CMDB in the orange part of the common service data model to the business relation and the business services to the gray part. All of it is in ServiceNow at this point in time. The only area that we don't have all the data in ServiceNow is the blue part on the upper left area, which contains the applications. And then the question was at the very beginning, is this the architecture that we want to follow in the future, or would we have any advantages providing or moving applications also into ServiceNow to set up the complete common service data model 3.0 as here? And if you go into the next slide, you will see a lot more details, which is based on the tables in ServiceNow on the out-of-box functionality. And I think what you see in the middle part, the blue part and the green part, you also see what Andreas mentioned already, that the idea was to have not only SPM, so the service portfolio. I know that there have been switches in namings, the service portfolio and the application portfolio in one system. So that was the idea at the very beginning, how to provide those data out of one system. And at the very beginning, I think this was then the next slide. And David, then I will hand over to you about the details. Yeah, at the beginning, we had an evaluation process together with PlanHorizon, although at the very beginning, and we had 5 use cases in LeanIX, and we had to evaluate all those use cases if everything is possible out of ServiceNow as well. Because the functionality, as I mentioned at the beginning, is now in LeanIX, which is not a bad platform, but without interfaces and a lot of other reasons as well. We thought about moving those into ServiceNow, and the evaluation was the first step. After this first step, we found out that the possible implementation plan to move all the functionality out of LeanIX into ServiceNow would take approximately 9 months implementation time. And concerning all those details, David, I would ask you to give us more on the technical part.
Perfect. First of all, thank you, Günther, for the introduction and also to show us the overview why Wacker has joined to go along with the CSDM 3.0. Yes, another big point, I think, from the evaluation was also to understand what are the core functionalities and how ServiceNow can provide their value to Wacker. Also, and how we can map the points, what we are needing to, at its best to the out-of-the-box things, and also to discuss all the integration purposes. How can we fit into the CMDB with it? So why Wacker has started the challenge? first of all, the constant single source of truth, that was always one pain point. They would like to have one big view according to the CSTM, as you have said before. There we have one look on our entire CMDB where we see all the entities, beginning from the design to the operational one, and also to the business view where we are selling all the services up to the business and to our other consumers. There also, it was a big need for an application lifecycle workflow automation. Before of that, it was a process in place. There are sometimes documents are manually interchanged and some kind of application governance has existed. But what have we done? We have identified many points what we must automate because of the capabilities what ServiceNow is delivering, also in the context of the application portfolio management. And also an additional big point was the alignment between service portfolio management and the PPM governance, what is already in the place, to integrating there all the APM points and the topics. So for us to achieve that, what were the points? All the challenges what we had continuously. At the beginning of the project, we've started with a small POC for one domain, for the procurement domain. Based on the findings what we had constantly, we are including that in our project plan, and incrementally are defining all the stories and the packages what we need to implement there. To ensure that we are really getting all the functionality delivered in our release one, what are the enterprise architects are expecting. The other point was very often we had discussions about enterprise architecture management and application portfolio management. ServiceNow application portfolio management, as the name it says, it focuses on application portfolio management. We would like to cover with the solution an enterprise architecture management process. We focus to digitalize the application portfolio and to enhance the usability of the CSTM. Another big point was also we always have to consider that not only stakeholders from the enterprise architecture or from the IT should join the project and should go together with the implementation. It's also a project what are covering the entire organization. You must make many alignment also with your complete enterprise strategy and there with all the stakeholders what you there have to ensure that you have the right understanding also from the capabilities and how you would measure them and the other points in future. Also very often at the beginning we had one data source and the data source is growing and growing, and then one very big challenge for us was to tailor that down at the end of the release one to ensure we had there the clean structure and the clean information what we are needing and what we would like to have in future in our application portfolio. Also, another big point was the integration with the service and project portfolio, what I have said before. Also there to ensure, because in parallel for service portfolio, many points are implemented at Wacker, and there we must ensure that, especially in the demand management process, if our steps doing and there is some kind of an assessment and measurement, depending on the demand, what the business has said, that is all done before we are starting with the definition of the service portfolio. There we have done an integrated point. Also, an additional point was from the technology management perspective that was very interesting for us. Normally, it's very easy to start. You can start with the software models if you have a software asset management foundation at least in place. One big point was for us, we must include all from the old system, all the existing software models. And for that, because we can't easily activate the software asset management foundation, because already some customization is done on the data entities. There, the big point for us was we must find a way to ensure that we are setting up based on that data in the data structure to ensure that in future we can start with SAM. And also at least to enable the enterprise architects, domain architects, and all the other people what are working inside of the process, that they are understanding what does it mean, application rationalization in the case of ServiceNow, how it should be done, and what are all the steps, what we must do there.
Okay. Let me add one sentence here, David, because one of the key questions at the very beginning of this project was, how do we handle enterprise architecture management? But asking the question to all stakeholders in this complete process, we found out that most questions out of enterprise architecture management can be answered using APM as well. So the overall enterprise architecture management was considered not as important as a combination of application portfolio into ServiceNow. That was the main reason why we considered having an interface between enterprise architecture and application portfolio outside of ServiceNow.
Thanks for that. I think that's true. That was a very, I think, also a big point and an advantage what we have now with ServiceNow. All the points integrated in one platform, also to include the data from the operational processes and the other points. And also, but first of all, from the highlights what we had in the implementation, that also pays in the single source of truth. Now we had it for the business application. There also for the business application governance, we had no process in place where all this can be done inside of ServiceNow. Also, the entire lifecycle could be designed there and lived there with the workflows. And we also have connected heavily to the CSTM, as we have said before. Additional to about the topic with the workflows, we have also defined their fulfillment structure. That means we had defined a business application request to ensure that all the tasks and the points what they must consider in their application governance are documented and done in a structured form. That's all now automated, created, and all from the people are doing efficient in time if they are needing it. And also, as I have said before, now we had the full integration with the service portfolio and the project portfolio management processes, especially inside of the demand management process, to ensure when the demand is coming up, that also all the architecture relevant topics are covered from the APM perspective. Thanks for your attention.
Well, thanks, David and Günther. Let's take a look here. There is already a question, but before I read that, I want to highlight one of the findings you reported here, one of the things you said. Günther, I think you said that there was a Lean IX, and that's actually doing its job, but it's outside of ServiceNow. And then, of course, you have a big advantage just from the network effects you have with a platform. And David, I think you had it on one of your slides. That is the question. You know, you have, this is the old best of breed versus platform approach. I see the same thing with strategic portfolio management. So what we see is that no matter what it is, a spot solution, project portfolio management, enterprise project portfolio management, which is outside the platform, always has a lot of disadvantages. And especially for SPM, which is the only module in ServiceNow I know some things about, I think also compared with other market leading solutions, the strategic portfolio management is by now, end of 2022, way ahead of every other solution. But other people might come to different conclusions there. But the platform approach will be the best of breed approach in the future. One interest, I will read the question from the audience now. One interesting information for me would be to know if you were able to change to Snow APM directly out of the box, if there was any customizations.
One of the biggest advantages also with the, especially with the example what I have said before with the technology management implementation, that's one module what you have inside of the application portfolio management scope. there we always had used all the points out of the box, and most of the things are configured. We don't have to do there some customization. We would at the beginning we would like to ensure that always, if new functionality is coming in, we can easily start with it in future. That was also at the beginning, always when we're evaluating what stories should be getting in for implementation. First of all, we evaluate, is that really, can we cover that with out of the box? And if it were a customization, we are making more rounds. And often at the end, the result for us was, no, we can also do it with the out of the box functionality. We have found more ways. Most of the things are really configured.
Well, to give you an overall answer about that, this was one of the major issues when starting with ServiceNow and also the CSDM 3.0. We did not want to talk only about standards and out-of-the-box functionality. We want to keep it through the whole scenario. So just in case it would not have been necessary, possible to use out-of-the-box functionality to a very high extent, we would have never done it, because we still have the possibility to do an upgrade, as an example, within 2 to 3 weeks, because we want to use out-of-the-box functionality as far as possible.
Which is always a very good idea. I think Daniel and Cruz mentioned something about that in their presentation. Back to out-of-the-box standard, that's what we see in the long run. Customers who focus very strong on the out-of-the-box standards are faring much better with their solutions. Another question here: what were the 5 use cases that LeanIX and ServiceNow required 9 months implementation plan? I think that's probably a misunderstanding, and also I know that the actual project did not take 9 months. And are now all 5 use cases possible without LeanIX? Günther, David, can you answer this one?
Yes, I can. But first of all, I need to add the 5 use cases. I can. That's not a problem, but I will do that later on in the chat or question answers area, so that you can see the 5 use cases. And no, we cannot use all those use cases to 100%. The question is, what was really important within the 5 use cases? And every important and well-used functionality is now possible in ServiceNow. Otherwise, we would not have been successful. In some areas, we saw that we had a lot of implementation work in LeanIX, but nearly nobody used it. And we did not focus on this functionality any longer. So we said we want to have everything in ServiceNow that is necessary. And that works, by the way, to 100%.
That is great. David, can you give some information about the actual duration of the project? Günther mentioned it's not live yet. That was my mistake, but I think it would be pretty much ready to go live. And there are other reasons why it didn't go live now, but I think it's pretty much completed. And what was the actual duration of the project, David?
I think the actual duration for the release 1 was really 5.5 up to 6 months, and then we are ready to go live with all the functionality what we are needing. For the second one, that's including the time frame up to the 9 months. There we have included some extended reports and the other points what we are needing there. But from the core functionality, what we have said, we need that in future to start with release 1. There we had all delivered in 5.5 up to 6 months.
Okay. Yeah, I can add, we don't have any more questions. I can add here that the business case for replacing LeanIX with ServiceNow APM seems to be present in many companies. So we already have some opportunities where we discuss with customers how we can do the same thing for them. With that, I would say thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. The next presentation we have in line is a presentation by my colleague, Dr. Thorsten Frey. So I think I met Thorsten the first time about 10 years ago. At that time, he was a PhD candidate at the Technical University of Darmstadt. He was actually the advisor for some of our master students who did their master thesis in the area of project portfolio management. So Thorsten did his PhD in project portfolio management. So he's truly an expert with a lot of process and consulting background, and now he has been 9 years with us already. Time flies. He hasn't changed a bit from the outside, and so he was made our head of strategic portfolio management practice this year, and he fills this role really great. And with that introduction, over to you, Thorsten. Please share some of your learnings and best practices about introducing strategic portfolio management.
Right, yes, thank you very much. And I want to give some insights from practice. So maybe a few words about me. So as Andreas said, I joined PlanHorizon 9 years ago. I've been introducing quite a lot of project management solutions, different solutions. So as Andreas mentioned, we were not always working together with ServiceNow. So I also had some experiences with Oracle and Clarity, etc. But since 7 years now, we have introduced a multitude of SPM solutions, and I'm still working as a project manager. I'm leading engagements at larger customers, and so what I would like to do is to share some of the learnings we have, and I think that cycles back to what James said and also what we learned from Allianz. So I think we make the same experiences everywhere about good practices, bad practices, and I would like to go briefly through ServiceNow SPM introduction projects, rollout projects, the journey you typically have, and what I would recommend to do, what I've seen what works good and what I've seen what is often skipped. With that, I would like to start into a few best practices. So the first thing I will highlight is when you start introducing SPM, no matter where you come from, it's always important first to start with really defining the objectives, the desirable outcomes you have. Very often in our projects, customers approach us and say, okay, we want to introduce SPM, we want to do that quickly. We ask the question, why do we want to do that? Yeah, because we have tool XYZ, we want to get rid of that. Or we want to have these use cases covered. Yeah, so it's very often people tend to jump into the solution very often, and that's a natural thing, but it makes it quite hard sometimes to do what we discussed, to stay out of the box, to understand the core processes in SPM, also to do the change that is often comes along with a new solution, with a new platform. And that's why I would advise always start thinking about some main objectives you have, like we want to get more transparency, we want to become more agile, and really not only do that on the paper, but also spread the word in the organization and explain people that's why we are introducing SPM. Even if you only want to get rid of a legacy solution, but that's also a good reason to explain why you want to do that. That's quite important, because else if you start with the requirements, people will focus very much on what they have now and will try to push existing systems, existing processes into the system, because that's what you have and that's tangible to you. Yeah, and in order to avoid that, it's very important at the beginning to involve leadership, because very often I face a situation that you say, okay, that's a process we currently have. Yeah, well, okay, that would be a better process in ServiceNow. Can we move into that direction? Yeah, we don't know. We don't know because we don't know what our leadership thinks about it. So that's why it's very important to have the leadership involved in the project, at least at the beginning. Yeah, you need both sides from my perspective. You need subject matter experts, process experts who know the process by heart, who also do the communication to people, but you also need leadership involvement in order to be able to change processes. Next best practice is it's very important to understand the capabilities of SPM. So you have different capabilities in there with demand management, project management, time tracking, a lot of different process areas, different capabilities, and they are all a bit different in nature. So if you look at demand management, that's highly configurable, yeah? And it's also, I think it's made for configuration because the processes are always very different, yeah? So you have different supporting functions involved very often. You have different approval processes. You play it hard, you play it soft, so that's quite different. And you have that's something where you can add on top, you can change certain parts. If you compare that to resource management, for example, resource management has a quite defined process in ServiceNow. It's like you plan the resources, you request the resources get confirmed and allocated. What you can define is how you run this process in your organization, and what you can also define is the data behind that and how you structure your groups, etc. But a very, very different approach, and that's why it's very important to understand these modules before you start to roll them out, because very often see customers who really spend a lot of time on defining how the ideal process would look like without seeing the system first time, and that usually leads to a mismatch of expectations. Yeah, and that's why it's very important, even if you have special requirements, etc., to understand and know the out of the box state and compare to this state at the beginning. And what is also important is to understand the relationships between these different modules. Yeah, so there are many capabilities you can introduce independently of each other, but it doesn't make sense usually to introduce resource management if you don't have projects or demands or other tasks in your system. Yeah, so it relates to something. Yeah. Once you have understood your the capabilities of ServiceNow, and I think it's always a feedback loop. Yeah, you look at the base capabilities, you look at your processes, and you try to match both parts. Yeah, and once you have a good understanding of that, I think one thing I would always recommend is to define your own roadmap. I think that's different for every customer. For Allianz, we have heard there are two parts to it. It's one thing is rolling out capabilities, and the other part is including new stakeholder groups, yeah, expanding it throughout the organization. And so you can grow in both directions. What you see here is it's not a perfect roadmap. It's not what I would recommend. It's just an example, yeah. But typically, what you can do very well with ServiceNow is you can move step by step. Yeah, I like this notion of crawl, walk, run. You have that in other areas also, in ITSM, for example. So it's like starting at the basics, learning how the platform works, including maybe initially only a few stakeholder groups, and then growing the platform throughout the organization. And what worked quite successfully, or at least for me, worked very well in larger organizations, is that you have really many iterations or projects, smaller projects with a clear focus, like we want to become more agile, we want to address the cost dimension properly, yeah, and that brings more focus to the organization. You can also roll out SPM full-fledged. We had that for smaller customers. It can also be quite successful, and then you start with a smaller part of the organization. If you're in a large organization, you have so much organizational change management, you have so much organizational learning involved, and so you have to build up a governance. So in this case, typically you want to go really step by step, yeah, and grow with the tool. We've already talked a lot of out of the box, yeah. So I think that has a bit changed over time. When I look at SPM or ITBM formally 6 years ago, it was still evolving, and many customers were adding on top, and some capabilities were missing, etc. Nowadays, you see it's quite complete, and you see you get great workspaces introduced, you get new capabilities, which bring a lot of functionality out of the box. And if you now introduce ServiceNow, in ServiceNow you have great abilities to to configure, to change things. Most rules, etc., are open to you to be changed, but you should be very careful doing that. I often see that companies try to touch the core logic, for example, behind resource management, etc., and that usually ends up in a cascade of changes. So if you want to grow your organization, if you want to involve additional stakeholder groups, it's quite important to really have one standard and not to build in too much customizations for smaller stakeholder groups. What you also should consider is the dependencies to other applications, as we said. So if you have out of the box SPM installation, you will have relationships into applications, into strategies, goals, etc. I often see that customers say, okay, let's get rid of that because we are not using that. I think that's also fine initially, but you should grow into that, to have these relationships, to make use of the data, to relate the data to each other, to relate the processes to each other, because that's where the value of ServiceNow comes from. What you can do very well is add specific processes on top. So what I often see is you can add approval processes, for example, which sit on top of what is there. You can add lessons learned processes. You can add change management processes, for example. You can use request management in ServiceNow very well if you have specific processes and want to manage these kinds of requests. Interfaces are a good part, but I would always recommend to try to stay close to the standard and add customizations on top if required. What we've also seen, I think we have seen that at Wacker, we have seen that at Allianz, we've seen that at many other customers. ServiceNow is great if you want to have a flexible approach, if you want to do POCs, if you want to run pilots, for example. Usually you have different instances. So what I've seen very often is that you first try out a new feature on one of the sub instances. You test it with a small stakeholder group, you gain experiences, and the great thing about these additional plugins is you can activate them step by step and expand as the organization learns. I think that's quite successful. And if you find out, okay, it's one capability is not what you expected, or you don't have the maturity, then it's good to at least explore it and then learn and understand and fail fast, instead of defining, specifying, thinking of how could you push that into the system. So I always recommend to use the chance to gain experience with the system. One very important aspect, and I think that also changed a bit over time, is the importance of data. So in IT service management, initially there was no customer, no CSDM, no common services data model, and I think that was a huge challenge for many companies, because everybody built up their own model, their own data model. In SPM, we don't have. Of course, SPM also has a data model behind, but it's not as specific as the common services data model. But still, there's a lot of organizational data behind that. There's a lot of financial data. There's a lot of portfolio data, etc. And I see very often in practice, customers struggle with that. Struggling in general with maintaining data, have good master data. But it's worth the effort to think about the data, how your organization looks like, how you want to represent that in the system, how your business units are structured, because that is relevant for reporting, that is relevant for new application areas, new capabilities like the alignment planner workspace. And so that is something to spend time on, and I have a lot of discussions with customers about data, how to structure the organization. And what we see very often is when customers introduce IT service management, and now they are moving on to strategic portfolio management, these aspects have not probably been addressed. Yeah, departments have been imported from Active Directory or somewhere else, and that's something definitely it's important to get that under control over time. If you do that right from the beginning, it's great. I also know customers who have master data stewards and who are spending really a lot of time to getting the data right. Yeah. And I think that's what you should do, because then you get real value out of the platform. You can use it for many areas in your organization. Another best practice is reporting. Yeah, so SPM, of course, reporting is very important for strategic portfolio management. You have the financial dimension. You want to know where the resources are. You want to have your KPIs. How long does a demand take on average, etc. So these are typical examples. But quite often, reporting requirements are discussed quite late. They are postponed because you first want to learn how the system is working, and then you want to build reports on top. That's something I would recommend to discuss reporting early on in the process. Even though if you don't set up all your reporting, it's important to see into which direction you want to go reporting wise. Yeah. Because then you can already see if you have the relevant data in the system, if you want to add additional fields to capture data. On the other hand, you should not exaggerate. So I see a lot of companies who are very reporting driven, and then they push a lot of information into demands, and projects and project managers and demand managers have to, or stakeholders have to provide a lot of information for reporting purposes only, and that's not fostering the adoption, to be honest. Yeah, so in this case, it's really important to think about what are the key KPIs, what do we want to learn from strategic portfolio management, what we currently don't know, and then make sure that you collect this data early on. What is also valuable is there are out-of-the-box dashboards readily available. Of course, they make use of out-of-the-box field, and not everything is relevant at the beginning. Yeah, not, of course, it's the full-fledged solution, and usually you don't use all these elements, but it's still worthwhile to take a look at these dashboards and move into that direction, I think, because the more ServiceNow is becoming really a standard solution, and I think it is right now, yeah, the more it is also important to have standard data model behind that. If you look at use cases like benchmarking, for example, that heavily relies on customers having the same data model behind that. Yeah, once you have rolled out SPM, I think the main challenges you always have, I think, is to make sure that the system has a high degree of usability and a high performance. Yeah. So PPM stakeholders, they usually expect a high degree of usability because they often have the chance they can use the system heavily and rely on the system, or they can do what is required only in the system, and that will depend very much on usability and performance. And I think the way to have high usability is not implementing specific processes for each user group. Yeah, so often have user groups who say, okay, I like ServiceNow, but it doesn't fit my requirements perfectly. Could you please add this additional field or this additional information for me? So you do local optimization in this way. I think that will in the end provide bad usability. So it's really important to keep a lean system and make sure that the system stays open for additional stakeholder groups. Keep it as generic as possible. And regarding performance, special learning is ServiceNow does not come with a permission model, so you can define your own permission model. Or at least there is a permission model, but you have a very flexible in ServiceNow how you want to define that. And that is great, but on the other hand, you should not get too specific with these permissions because that can have a huge performance impact in the end. So it's a good idea to think about a very generic permission model that serve the data protection purposes you have, but not be too specific about it, because every time you open a new project or demand or whatever, permissions are checked. And I've seen many customers who approach us and say, okay, we have introduced SPM, but it's so slow. And it's often because of failed permission models. I think the last best practice is, once it's perfectly rolled out, and already when you're starting to think about introducing SPM, it's important to think about the governance model behind that, because we have, as we've learned from Allianz also, usually there are many stakeholder groups. So I know another large customer where you have different departments involved: risk management, portfolio management, demand management, resource management, etc. So these are all different parties, and it's important to think about how do you manage these different stakeholder groups, and how do you ensure that you still have alignment within the system, so that the different parts fit together, work together, and how do you address their different needs and make still sure that the requirements are aligned with each other. And as we already said, what is also very important to make sure that you have training, update sessions, so you have quite a lot of different stakeholder groups in SPM, and it is very important that they understand the platform. ServiceNow is very often for new stakeholders, it's overwhelming because you have so many capabilities, but I think with good training, people finally like the platform and really make good use of it. And the last thing, I think you have to find a way. So it's quite challenging in practice, but once you have SPM rolled out, there will be continuous demands, requirements, and usually you get a lot of small requests for small changes. We would like to improve this or that, or we would like to add a specific process for one area, versus quite huge topics like taking alive the alignment planner workspace, changing the way portfolio management is conducted, etc. And you have to find a balance between these requirements. So you can't, of course, you can't reject all these small changes, because that also keeps stakeholder groups satisfied. But it's quite important to leave room and focus on huge initiatives that really bring you forward with ServiceNow SPM. Final slide here. Yeah, so that's the general environment you're usually facing. We had some of these topics mentioned in the questions and answers already. So I think implementing the solution from a technical point of view and from process point of view, that's only a small part of what you're facing. You have a lot of influencing factors like the organizational culture, how your worker council is working. Data protection can be a very, very influencing topic, etc. And that will shape the way your solution will look like in the end. And it's really important to manage that, and to explain to people why these factors are influencing the platform and how they are influencing. And a huge aspect in introducing strategic portfolio management is really organizational change management. So when you start introducing SPM, I think initially you often face resistance. You have worries. You have people who are used to a different system, etc. And that's something you have to actively manage. You have to convince people, why are you introducing SPM? Why are you moving from point solutions to a platform? What will be the benefit for the organization? I think that's really critical in your SPM journey. Yeah, that's it from my side, and I'm looking forward very much to questions.
Thank you very much, Torsten. Great stuff. Yeah, the organization, the soft stuff is the hard stuff. I think someone, either Thomas or me, we came up with that like 10 or 12 years ago. I think this is also an important aspect where SPM is very different from other modules. Of course, there's organizational change management in general with ServiceNow, But I would imagine with ITOM or SecOps, not so much. With SPM, it is quite extreme because resource management, investment funding means also power shifts. And of course, everybody says, I want transparency, but not everybody really wants it. So that is a bit different with this module. Let's take a look at Q&A. There are a couple of questions. First one, what would be a strategy to come back to out-of-the-box SPM when you are already using a heavily customized SPM installation, which might currently use some features differently as intended? Very good questions. I can partially answer that. We have a lot of experience with that. We have seen that a lot in the market, unfortunately. And maybe Thorsten, you can say a couple of words about that, and maybe even also Daniel, my colleague Daniel, who has a lot of experience with that, also wants to chip in with the answer there.
Yeah, I'll just jump in right away. One of the challenges, so this is always a challenge, and getting back to out of the box, as we also talked about in the Allianz presentation, is important in order to leverage new functionality that ServiceNow delivers going ahead. I think one of the main challenges there, customizations don't happen just because people wanted to customize. So typically, there's process requirements, there's business requirements behind the customization, and the very first step of the journey is to take these business stakeholders along, explain to them, demonstrate to them what the new functionalities are, what the new possibilities are that they're gaining, and actually making clear to people that you're not taking stuff away from them, but you're actually allowing them to use more and use more modern and more advanced functionalities going ahead. This was also the main driver and the main leverage that we had at Allianz Technology, where we said we've customized, in some parts, maybe we've customized ourselves into a corner, but if we revert back out, then if we go back to sort of the last known good configuration, then there's a clear path ahead for new functionality, for rolling out interactive planning, interactive resource management, all things that Allianz had, let's say, customized themselves out of. So it's usually less of a technical journey, or less of a technical challenge than a process and business and stakeholder challenge, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, in most of the cases, you have to do that step by step. Yeah. So for example, I've often inherited demand management processes which got out of control, yeah, because more and more, so it happens over time, more and more supporting functions, stakeholders, etc., joined, and they all wanted to participate, want to be represented in the process. Yeah. And the first thing is really to talk about, is it really necessary in this way? Are there alternatives? So you have to, if you want to get back, you have to talk with the different stakeholders. You have to convince them first that it is important to get back to the standard. And then you can go step by step. Sometimes it's a lot of fields that have been added. Sometimes there's a lot of logic to be added, and you have to review that. Yeah, what we did is deactivating things step by step, seeing what is the impact. Is it really hurting somebody? And then you will very often find there is no resistance against that, because you find out it has not been used at all. Yeah. But it depends very much. I think there are also good reasons, as I said, why so many custom things have been added, because the system has grown over time. Now it's much more capable than initially. But I think what we have seen from James, yeah, if you say into which direction SPM is going, if you show that to stakeholders, hopefully they will understand why it's a good idea to get back to the standard and make use of these great features.
Yeah, what we have often seen when a customer approached that and he had a heavily customized SPM system already, this came in existence very often because it was a combined wish list of many different departments. So basically, okay, we want to do all this. So one of our most important job, of Daniel's job and Thorsten's job, is no, this is not a good idea. We would rather discuss, where do you want to go? Let's do it like this. Let's stay to the standard. By the way, we do offer ServiceNow SPM health checks to do an analysis and make some recommendations how you can get back to standards. They are different from the ServiceNow health checks you probably know, which are more great stuff, but very different thing on the technical level. But ours is more about going into the consulting mode and do this thing. One more question here. What effort is there in migrating data from a legacy to SPM? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I can try to pick that up. So of course, it depends very much what your legacy system is, and it also depends if you want to migrate. Yeah, so there are different strategies. Sometimes you don't want to migrate because it's you have a completely different data model behind that. What I can say is ServiceNow has good capabilities to integrate data, technical capabilities. If you look at import sets, etc., I think that's not the problem. The data model behind that can be a problem. And what you typically do is to take a look at the data you have and think of what do you really want to migrate. So usually I'm not migrating 100%. So to give you an example, migrated for one customer from Clarity to ServiceNow, and they are mainly using Clarity for time tracking purposes. So what we did, we migrated the projects, we migrated the rate matrices, the tasks, etc. What we did not migrate, for example, is the past the track times. We decided, okay, there's one point in time when we switch from one system to another one, and we don't want to move all that data over to the new platform. Daniel, maybe you have also comment on that.
One last question here. What advice would you give to a reporting plugin company in the ServiceNow App Store trying to reach SPM needs?
Easiest advice, first of all, talk to us. We have reporting requirements in all our customer projects. So contact us after the conference. Very interested to hear about your plugin. So I think a lot of our customers can benefit from that.
Yeah, we just had a discussion. What is dashboarding? What is reporting? What is BI? So yeah, very interesting. Write us. Okay, maybe we're not so far on time. Maybe
Günther's raising his hand as well. Sorry, from one of the panelists.
Günther.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to add one remark to the question concerning the return to standard. Well, once you want to convince people, you are in the second step already. The first one, in my experience, is to get top management attention. As long as the people even don't listen to you and to changes in processes, it might not be successful. So the first thing is going back to any standards needs top management attention and agreement.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Yes.
Yeah, very important. We are well in time. So one more question from my side. So now we've seen this huge SPM module and all the things you can do there. And can you share a couple of things with our participants, a couple of your views on would you rather plan very large projects and define all the process and do that, or more a series of shorter iterations? We often discuss with our customers to go live in a relatively short time span with an MVP, a minimal viable product. Where do you see advantages, disadvantages in these two approaches?
Yeah, I think if you are able, I would prefer going step by step because of the complexity, and it's also if you are able to move fast, there's less risk to fail. You know, the longer it takes, the more things will come in. We've seen changes in organizations. There were great plans, and then the board changed, leadership changed, different directions. So many things can happen along the road, and the longer the project takes, the more likely it will become that something goes wrong. And the other point is, I mean, you want to show early successes. Yeah, I think you want to, also from organizational change management perspective. Yeah, if you're working 1 year on a project to improve portfolio management, etc., people will wonder what is happening. Yeah. So, the best thing is to show them, and you can do that if you're moving step by step. Yeah. Sometimes you can't avoid it. It depends if you're really moving from several systems into ServiceNow. If you want to go live with several organizational units in parallel, etc., then sometimes you're forced to have a large project. But if you can avoid it, if you can cut it down into several steps, I would always do that.
Thank you. And with that, actually, Thorsten, I will hand over to you and would like to ask James, Günther, and David to also, and Daniel also, to join. And Thorsten will lead us through a panel discussion. Please, for all the participants, drop your questions in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will pick up on these questions. But I believe Thorsten has also prepared some.
Cruz will also be joining for Allianz.
Yes. Cruz, of course. Sorry.
Yeah, great.
I wasn't sure of Cruz. Cruz has a very busy schedule, as I remember. But great that you're still here.
Thank you. No problem.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for joining. So I don't see any questions in the chat at the moment. If they are in the F&A, if you have questions, please join in. We can answer them then. A part of that, I think we've talked a lot about organizational change management, and I would like to hear from practice. Günther, I know that you have really managed to stay very close to the standard, to out of the box. Can you maybe share some of your experiences, how you manage that? Yeah, how did you interact with your leadership and your team to make that happen? You're on mute. Sorry.
Well, actually, one of the key questions concerning this, and it is in communication. Whenever there is some discussions around processes, you always can tell people to go for the next minimal viable product, and then the discussion goes into functions that we never see at the very beginning and things like that. And you always have to take people back and say, no, let's focus on this one first. And then it's easier to stick to the standard than if you handle all the functionality that people want in one big portion. So what we really did every month or two was having a management presentation. What are the next steps? What is important? Why do we want to go beyond standard? And in many cases, we just said, no, we don't do it at the moment. Not everybody is happy about that, by the way. I thought it's much easier than it was in the end. I don't want to say it's a fight, but close to that.
So I think it is. I'm also in some engagements where I'm also involved in the product management team, and I know it's a constant fight. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and in the very beginning, in kickoff meetings, and when you say standardization and harmonization, everybody says, of course. After the first meeting, they forgot about it. So again, it's a permanent discussion, sticking to standard as much as possible.
Yeah. Cruz, maybe you can also share your experiences about that.
Yes, my experience also similar to what Günther said, and also what Günther said before about this changing and change management strategy. It's always good to have these things regularly communicated to the management. Always this top-down approach really helps when it comes to international rollouts or standardization of the process. But of course, there are challenges. From the acceptance of management, in my experience, was a bit easier compared to make it operationalize in the local areas. So this is always a fight. So from the management point of view, yes, harmonization, standardization, less implementation timeline, more value add, grow along with the product feature, less operational cost, less management cost, upgrade features, and all those things. There are a lot many benefits that we can easily show to a management. then to a project management sitting in France or America, which their own comfortability to explain them, okay, please onboard into this tool. But at the end of the day, the success of the product comes with the users when they try to use it and accommodate it. And here, this is where I feel there's more of difficulties. Yeah, over to you, Daniel.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say, James, we had your feature function roadmap presentation at the beginning, and now you've heard a couple of customer sessions around rolling out SPM to customers, staying out of the box versus customizing. How does ServiceNow see this? How do you position ServiceNow SPM also along those dimensions? And how do you see the dichotomy, if you like, between customizing, configuring, staying out of the box, seeing it as a tool versus seeing it as a platform? I think that would be an interesting perspective.
Right. So the last 7 years, I've sort of seen quite a lot of different examples of things. I think lessons learned is obviously the ethos of a rollout is to stay as close to out of the box as possible. And in quite a lot of my early engagements with customers, as I was working with them, didn't make me the most popular person in the room when I was, no, don't do that. You use this capable. Why do you want to add that attribute there when actually this is something out of the box which does something similar? So I think that is sort of the way I've always approached engagements. However, as I've seen over the years, particularly, you take an example of APM, for example, customers were doing application portfolio management on the platform before ServiceNow would actually introduce an application portfolio management capability. So in that essence, we introduced a new table at the time, the business application table. And we knew when we introduced that, I think 2017, something around that sort of time frame, we knew that customers had already been populating other tables with their business application. So one of the things we needed to do was provide the ability for them to easily migrate the data they already had into the new tables. And as we've been evolving the common services data model, for example, one of the things we did, I think around the San Diego timeframe across the platform, was introduce two new attributes, lifecycle stage and lifecycle stage status, across a whole plethora of different tables. So we got this consistency. And again, as we did that, we provided capability to, in APM, for example, to take the existing install status attribute and migrate that across. So the way we look at it is our advice is always to stay as close to out of the box as you can, but in all cases we recognize that's not always going to be possible. But then as we evolve new capability, or as we enhance things like the alignment planner workspace and bring in lenses and things like that, look at how, as we do that, how customers are going to be able to adopt that new capability in the view of they've probably been using it for the last 12 months, 18 months in a previous version, and making sure there's a path forward. So that's like the sort of way we focus on. But I think one of the other things we don't want to say is, by saying always stay outside the box, what we don't want to do is stop customers innovating on the platform. One of the I sort of made reference in my presentation about one customer had actually looked at leveraging machine learning around resource plans and identifying the right resources for those resource plans in order to let the system take the strain rather than it being an admin process. And that's something we've learned from them, and that's how we can see through the eyes of the customer what they want to do, understand that use case, and then we can bring those things as out the box capabilities inside the solution as part of the roadmap. So definitely don't want to stop customers innovating, because there's been lots of examples on that roadmap I presented, which has actually stemmed from customers doing it first in their instance, and we've been able to bring it, systemize it, and roll it out to other customers part of the roadmap. And sorry for waffling on there, but
no, it's a great answer, and I think what you're recommending is also watch out to everything that's coming ahead and look if you can make use of that. Yeah, because I have one customer, they introduced demand tasks, for example, before ServiceNow did that. And now they have their custom demand task, and now it's time to see, okay, there is a standard demand task, and yeah, let's move to that. And that's exactly what they're doing. I think that's how you slowly, steadily get back out of the box. Yeah, as the functionality is growing, you have an opportunity to migrate into that. It means you might have to change something. It might be that you're not getting everything you currently have because your customized process might look a bit different, but maybe you gain something on top of that. And so that's, I think it's not staying 100% out of the box, but staying closer and getting closer. I think that's a target for most companies. And maybe David, I know you have been involved in the APM project, and I know it was not always easy. Yeah, we say, okay, there was LeanIX, yeah, and of course there are architects, and they love their architecture too. Yeah, but what I found interesting is we had initially, I know you had these discussions with the architects. Yeah, we have that and this in LeanIX, and why don't we have that in ServiceNow, and how do we deal with it? So what was, and I know you managed that quite well. So what is your your success factor? How do you convince the architects in this case? Are you on mute?
No, it works. Yes, sorry. The biggest point there was often asking them, do you really needing that? Do you getting the value outside of that attribute for your future application governance? Do we needing that in a completely in the context in the future when you're watching on the business application? Often there, I think a very good example what we had by the customer was about the GMP relevance. Do we really need it there at that level? And is that right when we documented it like that, or do we need some additional information? Always I'm challenging them many to say we only do that if we are seeing we are getting out of that information the value what we are expecting. That is the point. And very often I'm more discussing with them when they are coming to me and saying we would like to make there some customizing. Please there see we had already a field in place. Does that not really comes nearly to that what you would like to have? Do we really needing there some custom field or some customization? Because in future, that's a point what you must always consider. That's always also the point what I'm coming back to that. It's always then on your list, and you must have it in mind when you make an upgrade and the other points. And often then also they are rethinking, do we really need that? Do we would like to have that always on our list? And then it's also
again, it's communication, and being a bit ahead. Yeah, so you have to know the context and the application quite well, and then you can have these discussions, I think. Yeah. Great. I think we also have great questions from the audience. Or
yeah, there are questions. Just wanted to point that out. There's some very good questions from.
So one question is, how hard was it for the users to understand the difference between demand versus ideas versus requests from ITSM? Yeah, and so that they submitted the correct ticket with the correct process link. Maybe, Bruce, I think that would be a great question to you because you have a very, very large community. So.
Yes. So first of all, the differentiation between ID service request and demands, this is not easy. Yeah, because from our point of view, when we roll out to the customers, they get a tool. That tool helps them with whatever they want, in the sense of if they have any requirement, if they want to order a system, mobile, or they want to have a project, for them it's one system. So to differentiate that, yes, this was very difficult. Like it's about the training. So we navigate them to certain level of request towards ITSM and proper project relevant, delivery relevant, demand relevant. So whatever comes as IT delivery needs, then we move them into demand. It's not easy, but it's not comparatively difficult between ideas and demands. So when we say ideas and demands, this is furthermore integrated and complicated to differentiate and to explain to the people the differentiations, and also not only for the end users, but also people on the business process side. They expect a lot of demand work to be done in idea stage, lot of controlling and approvals to be done on idea stage. So these kind of things, it's not easy. So for them, it's an entry door. It needs to have some filters. And it's an entry door. For example, we have two types of IT delivery requirements. One, it's an internal. Then here we have some flexibility. And when there are other type which comes from customer as IT delivery need towards Allianz technology. Here it gets really critical and little more tricky, because they have some contracts, and because here it comes with their contract, their feasibility check and all those things, and giving a proposal back with the team setup, expectation, timeline, signatures, and all those things. From business process mind, they cover everything into between idea, demands before getting into project. So this was a bit difficult. It was a very good question. It's a real-time problem. And yes, I mean, it's not, we can't confidently at the moment say, yes, we have tackled it, but we have positioned ourselves. Somehow people will learn to go through via that door. Yeah. And then it's moreover, they get used to those systems. It takes time.
Günther, is that similar for Wacker or?
To be honest, I think the processes are a bit different here. First of all, whatever is an ITSM service request comes out of the user community. So they don't have to differentiate between demands and requests, because all of this goes via the service desk, and service desks don't handle demands. That is handled by IT people, because people who have real demands in the first value stream that we have, they always contact IT instead of the service desk. So this is the first thing. On the other hand, within IT, it's even difficult to have all people understand the difference between demands and service requests. So we tried to do two things at the moment. First of all, every IT person has to participate in an ITIL training session in order to get to talk the same language. And by the way, this is also one of the soft facts that can be caught really hard if people have the same words for very different issues or vice versa. So you need to take care that using the same words, using the same expressions also mean the same thing. Also in respect to this one. And the second thing that we try to do within IT is to use the value stream model from IT for IT. You can Google it if you want, because it distinguishes between 4 value streams. And that makes it easier for people to understand that a demand is something totally different and belongs into a strategic portfolio management versus all the run activities, and this is part of IT service management. So if they know that there are very different value streams and how it's handled, then they understand the difference much easier.
Yeah, I can add on top of that, what I see is different customers, the processes are implemented very differently. It depends a bit on the culture, it depends on the general setup, how business interacts with IT, or sometimes we also have business to business processes there. What I often see is you have the chance to set it up the way you think it's right. Yeah. So I see customers who are using idea management. I see customers who are not using idea management. Some customers, it's a very strict process. You have to have an idea submitted before you can go to the demand. Others do that in a quite flexible way. So it's something you're shaping. But from my experience in a agile setup, yeah. So in a product owner setup, I know we managed to bring people from a quite unstructured approach to a more structured approach by saying, okay, you always have to submit a demand, or a defect or incident, and we look at what is it really, and if people submit the wrong thing, we constantly get on their nerves and say that's a wrong channel. Here's a definition, this is a demand, this is an incident, please make sure you're using the right channel. That's something people won't like at the beginning, but they quite fast get used to that. James, sorry.
Yeah, so I'll just have a couple of examples on this. So one of the customers, from an ideas perspective, one of the ways they were utilizing idea management was to, because you can set up different idea modules, they were sort of setting an idea module up to be like a campaign. So what they would do was run these campaigns in a sort of a time box way. One of them was something like make IT simple, something like that. And so they spin up that particular idea module, maybe add some additional questions for those type of ideas. And that focus, had a focus effort targeting ideas for a certain thing. And then they set up another idea module for another campaign and do it like that. So it's a way of doing targeted ideation across the organization, which was an interesting concept. Another large organization, they had a lot of teams inside their IT organization, and each of those teams were getting requests in, and they were tracking those requests and tracking who was working on those requests utilizing Excel essentially. And each team would have their own Excel, and some of the teams, the entry point to the team was something on SharePoint, or it was an email, or it was a service request. But what that meant was they didn't have any visibility on exactly what the teams were working on and costs and those sorts of things. So what they did was establish via the service portal a category in the service catalog called the single front door to demand, and in that had record producers creating demands for certain types of requests. So, and also they had some specific types of service requests in there as well. And for some of those service requests, which would typically gone on to be like a service management type thing, some of them they actually converted into demands in the background. And what they were doing was essentially the things that could go through as like an incident, like something that's simple, they went through as normal. But the things where it needed resource and things that would take time and had costs associated to it, they automatically create those into demands and use some workflow to actually say, well, it's going to that team, so we're going to create a resource plan on that demand for that team. We'll create some cost estimates based on the information provided by the record producer. So it gave them then an overall visibility of what was going on, but it also meant the teams were all managing all of their stuff inside SPM, and just give them great levels of visibilities. So just two examples of how customers have looked to leverage ideas and demands in different ways to support their processes.
All right. Yeah, we have one other question which I would also like to ask you. I think it goes especially into the direction of Cruz and Günther. Looking back on your successful projects, what were pitfalls that you would circumvent if you could do it all over again, and how did you solve them during the implementation? Maybe Günther, do you want to start?
Yeah. To be really honest, I think that answer is pretty short, because you had it in your presentation. I would really say that the soft facts are the hard facts, and we would change a bit towards handling those soft facts more intensely. The other ones are stick to standards, and that was something that we have in the end. In our opinion, we are pretty close to the standard. We are pretty close to a configured solution and not a customized solution. That was one of the keys to success, but we reached that goal. other than that, not everybody is very well aware of all the processes, but that's all on your slide of the soft facts. Don't underestimate that.
Yeah, and I think the way to deal with that is to be really honest, and sometimes also so don't avoid conflicts. Yeah, that's something we learned. So if you have new people in our team, they often say, okay, I have to do whatever the customer wants. I have to serve the customer. And we say, okay, no, sometimes you have to protect people from doing mistakes. That's our role. Yeah? We are consultants. We know where it ends up, or we should know that. And then, of course, you often you get into dispute. Yeah, so it's like, I want it this way. Why don't I get it? But I think that's what you have to do, and you have to do that. We have to do that as consultants. You have to do that inside your organization as a product owner or whatever. So it's really not taking everything as it is, but fighting back and asking the right questions. I think that's quite important. Yeah. Cruz, maybe you also have.
I think you summarized it really well. I mean, the only thing is that in our presentation as well, we showed what we have learned and what are the challenges. Some of them, it really took time and deviated from our original scope and it loss of time and things. So maybe if we could redo something, some of the elements like team setup, handling to the standard out of the box, educating the business process representatives that, okay, how well in the long picture or how the end will look like Thorsten, like you said, like kind of a consulting role as well to educate them. Like if we use, I mean, your presentation as well, you said that some of the elements we don't need it in 2020, but we left it because we don't need it. It's hard to bring those unnecessary features and educate them, bring all those things. But if you look in 2022, we lost some relations between the tables, data, which we couldn't use, report, and now to bring back, for example, like I told, we didn't start with the extra original flow. We started with project, some in resource management, then went to demand management. Now we are thinking about program. So in case if you could have used all the necessary tools that is provided out of the box possible, then today to gain and build over it might be a little bit easier compared to what the complexity that we raised. So this may be one thing that we could redo. I mean, if you can reverse the time, yes.
Yeah.
But overall, I think even in the future, we make mistakes, we learn. And another point that also you mentioned in your presentation, to fail fast. I think this is also another learning. Yes.
Yeah. I also think you can't avoid mistakes. If you do that, you will, no matter how experienced you are, you will make mistakes, and you will also lose some of these discussions. Yeah. Yes. There might be stakeholders that are pushing so hard to get what they want, and then you have to fail and fail fast. Yeah. But it's you shouldn't do that all too often. I think that's quite important, and yeah, to learn from mistakes. And if you see things repeating again and again, yeah, then you have to get proactive. You have to stop that. If you see, yeah, also inside this, if you are in a stable setup, in an agile setup, you're doing your work, you're getting your demands, etc. It's progressing and progressing. And from time to time, you have to think, okay, sorry, we are getting pushed. We get all these requirements. What do we want to push? Yeah. So also to have your own initiatives, your own things you want to drive. I think that's quite important.
Yes, kind of a roadmap for the product. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Was one question: standard set of reports out of the box on the horizon. So I think
it's a point that comes up with a lot of customers. Reporting out of SPM, PPM functionality, standard reports on various functional modules. We get asked that a lot in a lot of customer engagements. So I know there's a couple of content packs, but yeah, standard set of reports for SPM. James, I think that one's for you.
Yes, and I get that one a lot as well. So that is definitely an item on our roadmap. We will be releasing some persona-specific dashboards throughout. I haven't got the exact timeline, but throughout 2023, we're looking at increasing that reporting content, and it will probably be directed through new sort of dashboard workspace experience as in order to provide that that level of information. But I'm always happy to hear of any specific types of or focus areas customers are looking for and specific types of reports. Very happy to hear any examples that customers are looking to achieve, because I can fast track that through to our inbound engineering team for them to take a look at.
Maybe I could come up with a list of things early next year, James.
Yeah.
Have a lot
Brilliant.
of, like, yes, from the resource management point of view, I think one of the people also asked about investment capacity relevant reports and multi-layer reports and all those things. I mean, compare with roles and proficiency level, skill management. So there are different kinds of things people are expecting when it comes to report. And also, like I said, we also driven a company with a lot of financial controlling and accounting driven. So we have pillar controllers, program managers, and strategic partners and initiatives. So they also want to check different kind of numbers on a resource layer, on an initiative layer, on a project layer, on a demand layer, against plan, actual, and also kind of a cost benefits and all those things. I think we as such have a lot of user adaptions and pushbacks also relying on these kind of reports. So I think, yes, we are on the way of collection. Yes, that's one area that we are also looking to improve ourselves in this SPM zone next year. So any of this kind of discussion, James, would be really helpful early next year.
Let's definitely do that.
We're coming to the end here. By the way, my colleague David, he just started an initiative. So we are also collecting all of our knowledge over the many years, not only the ServiceNow years, but yeah, we'll be happy to discuss this with you, James. So great discussion. We're coming to the end of our second SPM conference. Thank you very much to my colleagues, Torsten, Daniel, and David, and especially to our external speakers who all have a very full schedule. We know that. And this was really great. I learned a lot again. Please, to the participants who are still there, of course, we lost some. All of the participants will receive the recording of this conference automatically. Please, if you want, some already shared some feedback before they had to drop off. So if you want to share something, share that in the chat, please. We'll be happy, but especially about areas where we can improve. So next year, in about 1 year, we will have our third edition with different customers. And a couple of closing words from my side. Strategic portfolio management has come a long way in a short time, 7-8 years. So it's, I believe, it's taking over the market leadership, and we will replace a lot of the legacy PPM applications. We are already doing that. And when you have a ServiceNow strategy and you embrace a platform strategy, you work with CSDM, etc. For IT, it's basically a no-brainer decision. And in the presentation from James Ramsey earlier this year, he said a great sentence, which I stole a little bit from my customer conversations. So James, you said, ServiceNow is the platform which brings the world of technology and the world of work together. And I think this is a great positioning. And the world of work is managed by strategic portfolio management. That's what you find on our website as our new slogan: manage any kind of work across your enterprise, agile, hybrid, waterfall, in IT, in business, everywhere. So that's how we position that. That's how some of our customers already embrace that, who have unrestricted licenses. We have Miltenyi Biotech with 5,500 employees and 5,500 users of SPM, and all the projects are there. And this is a great business case if you have insight in IT and business at the same side. We saw how powerful and mighty the strategic portfolio management is, and you might get overwhelmed. But I think a key point is it's great. The product is great. We as a partner are extremely happy with the roadmap, and the SPM business unit is just doing an outstanding job and pushing on, adding more functionality. We saw a lot of those things coming up in 2023. James showed us, but I want to point out it is very important to work with a partner who knows SPM. That's why we focus very much on strategic portfolio management. And that is something which I think came out in all the discussions around organizational change management, all the different domains, all these different frameworks, classic and agile, etc. You must know your way, and you do need a couple of years experience before you can successfully consult on strategic portfolio management. So for us in the last 3 years, a lot of things changed quite a bit. So since the start of the pandemic, we have not only done projects in Germany, we have done projects in South Africa, in the UK, in Australia, and the US. And this is part of this new kind of work mode we have. Like, we had webinars before the pandemic, but as you probably also experienced, work and project became different. And now it is more fully accepted for US customers to work with a German company and work in a new model, which we call global remote delivery. So we want to do this. We do this more systematically now. We started our office in Switzerland, from where we have sales activities in November this year. We have an office in San Diego in the US. The US is definitely the largest market for ServiceNow and probably also for strategic portfolio management. And we will start active sales operations at the beginning of 2023. So same will happen later, maybe 2024 in the Asia Pacific region. So we want to be the most important and the best partner of ServiceNow for the strategic portfolio management. A couple of more things. I mentioned already our YouTube channel. You will see this conference, other interviews with customers, video casts, but also a lot of videos around organizational change management, scaled agile frameworks, Scrum, Kanban, all these different methodologies. So that's like one place to go if you want to know about all the domains. And also two more things on a little bit of a different area, but definitely related to the area of strategic portfolio management. On the YouTube channel, you will very soon see a video about a small app we produced on participatory budgeting, which addresses how do you budget for in a safe organization, scaled agile framework organization, which this also will become an app which goes to the App Store. In the App Store, we have already our technology business financial manager, which supports financial processes and chargebacks according to the rules and processes of the technology business management framework. That is a framework which was initially started by Aptio. Aptio, you probably know as a market leader in this kind of chargebacks. So this does pretty much similar things than Aptio is doing, but inside ServiceNow. Again, better to have it inside ServiceNow. But also we found that that this does not work for all the customers. So at the end of Q1, we will release our more general financial management application, which is very powerful in terms of manipulating mass data for finances, organizing all the chargebacks, etc. I know that many SPM customers used the IT financial management module in the past, which is not sold actively anymore by ServiceNow. So this will be in the App Store. It will be available if you're interested in this application. Write us. You can write me also info@planhorizon.com. This will end up with me and also with my colleagues. And also, if you're interested in a ServiceNow strategic portfolio management health check, you want to discuss something, or you want to do a project with us, please contact us. Thank you very much for your time and participation. And again, great thanks to all the speakers. Have a good rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a whole. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.